Howdy, it's Jim Arado, and real quick before we get going, I just want to point out to you that chair you just saw up above that door is the chair that Wild Bill was sitting in when he was killed, playing that famous game of poker at the Saloon Number 10 in Deadwood, South Dakota. And we are in Deadwood, South Dakota. Right now we're sitting in the Deadwood Social Club, which is a nice little restaurant that we've eaten at a couple times, and we liked it quite a bit. Just a nice little place. We're on the streets of Deadwood, South Dakota now, and this is just a neat little town. I'm sure you know about Deadwood, South Dakota. I'm sure you've heard the legends and the stories, and if you haven't, you should. I just checked my bookshelves a moment ago. After Salem, Massachusetts, and San Antonio, Texas, I have the most books on my bookshelf about Deadwood. Just a fascinating town, lots of weird history, and you know I love my weird history. And this is just mostly us filming along the streets. We spent a few hours there on our recent trip to Rapid City, and this, by the way, is from this would have been early September 2020. Just you might want to look too. I know we're wearing our masks. I did notice quite a few people through here wearing them. Not everybody was, though. I don't want to say it was 50-50, but it might have been about 50-50. You're still mostly outdoors. Anyway, I do think it's interesting how different areas are dealing with the whole COVID thing. But yeah, this is us just filming up and down the street. One of the cool things in Deadwood is you can take a little stagecoach tour. And this does look like a lot of fun. In fact, I'm probably going to have to do this next time we're in Deadwood. Just look how cool that looks. And what a great way to see the town, too, of Deadwood. Some bragging rights associated with taking that tour. Yeah, but again, I'm just filming on the street. I don't have a whole lot to say. I would tell you about Wild Bill and Calamity Jane. You can read all about them, though. So I'm just going to randomly talk about what I like about Deadwood. Oh, and by the way, this little fella here is a little wood carver, and they've got another location out in Keystone, right by the Borglum Museum. I really like what they're doing. In fact, probably next time we're in the area, I might have to buy a wooden cowboy from them. They do some pretty cool stuff. I like the bears too, but if I ever buy a carved bear, it's got to be from Gatlinburg. But check out those cowboys. Those are just really nice. Yeah, but they do some nice work there, and it's very unique to the area. Check out that dragon. Oh man, yeah. Anyway, yeah, impressive stuff. I wanted to mention too, Deadwood right now is mostly known for gambling. There's the site of the original Saloon Number 10, where Wild Bill was shot down. And actually, I think if you read your history books, a lot of that area was burned up, and they're not even 100% sure exactly where that happened, but they think it's roughly right there. There's a business in there now. I know when we were here in 2012, I believe that spot was vacant, but there's a company there now trying to, claim the title of the site where Wild Bill was shot. And then there's also the new Saloon Number 10, which that they have the chair that Wild Bill was shot in hanging above their door that I showed you at the very beginning of this video. And again, I'm going to try to stop watching so much of the video. I'm going to get distracted. This is just me randomly filming around the streets. Very walkable town. If you're staying at one of the cool historic hotels around here, you can walk pretty much everywhere you want to go. This was our second visit. Like I said, we went there in 2012, and we did a tour of the famous cemetery, and we also did a bus tour. Both of them were a lot of fun and worthy of doing. On this particular trip, though, we spent maybe not quite half a day just walking up and down the streets here. We also did the brothel tour. More on that in a moment. Something else, too, is I'm not a gambling person. I'm not even much of a fan of casinos. However, I have a cousin who is really into collecting poker chips. I believe he told me he has maybe around 700 or 800. And he collects a $1 poker chip from every casino that he can. And I'm guessing his collection's pretty complete at this point, but he's kind of got me into that too. I appreciate the novelty and the uniqueness of poker chips. So on this particular trip, my wife and I walked into, I believe, every casino we could up on the street here. Oh, I wanted to point out that little wagon across the street. That's like a local Deadwood community wagon. They were giving out literature and stuff promoting the town. I took a Deadwood travel guide from them. I love that kind of stuff. I thought that was kind of a nice way to promote the town. But yeah, so I've started collecting, conservatively, poker chips as I travel. If a casino's interesting or if there's something historic about it, I've been picking them up. And that was kind of cool. So we walked into probably 6 or 7 of the casinos just along the strip here. If we passed one, we'd walk in, and I would buy usually just a $1 poker chip. And it was an interesting experience. I wouldn't say that the cashiers were enthusiastic about selling a $1 poker chip, but I found out after I sat down and looked at all the poker chips, just about every one of them gave me a nice uncirculated poker chip. They realized I was just somebody bobbling through town, with a new hobby, and they kind of went out of their way to give me a nice poker chip. So to their credit. But, none of them tried to upsell me. None of them tried to say, hey, check out our $5 chip or anything like that. They just took my dollar and handed me a poker chip. I know at French Lick in Indiana, I went to their cashier when I first started this new hobby that my cousin got me into. And I ended up buying several of their unique $5 chips, too. They upsold me, and I spent some coin there. But the casinos here did not try to do that. Just for what that's worth, but they did most of all of them except for one, I'll say, obviously gave me a very attractive poker chip. So yeah, so Deadwood has been associated since the beginning of Deadwood with gambling and prostitution. You could probably throw drinking in there too, but it's kind of had that lawless western town, kind of the stereotypical, lawless town in the West. And it's early days. It really was that. And there's a whole lot you can get into about how it started out as a town, in the Dakota Territory. I love the fact that guy said howdy to me. And my wife and I actually had a little discussion after this. I think howdy is a great way to greet people. She disagrees. Anyway, yeah, there's a lot to be said. In its early days, it was sort of outside of the jurisdiction of the U.S. government in many ways, and that's how it got away with some stuff. And, that's how it kind of developed its reputation and maintained it longer than some areas. It still tries to kind of market itself, as that's kind of what you go there for. You go there because it's the original, Western town. It's the Western town that everybody knows. And, you have the actors in the streets doing shootouts, and you have the reenactment of Wild Bill getting shot. They still cash in on that. And obviously with the casinos and the gambling, yeah, check it out. It's a festive town. And one thing I wanted to mention is they've started doing a brothel tour now. And it's $15 a person. They do it on the hour, I think 11 to 7 most days. And I definitely wanted to do that on this particular trip. And we did that, and it was a really interesting trip. A really interesting tour on this trip. We kind of went, and that's a nice little souvenir shop there that you kind of go down in there. That's I just wanted to point that out. We've always bought souvenirs there. It's a good place to buy postcards, novelties, that kind of stuff. Yeah, and so anyway, they do the brothel tour there now, and I believe we had a really fun guide named Angie. I'm pretty sure her name was Angie. It was an A name. I'm pretty sure it was Angie. And she gave us a tour. You see 8 rooms on the tour. And it's in one of the old brothels. And they have the rooms decorated up the way you might have seen them, geez, probably in the maybe early 1900s. You know, when there was prostitution going on there quite a bit. And with Deadwood, prostitution wasn't exactly legal, but it went on, you know, kind of in a well-known but sort of ignored way until 1980. 1980. And that kind of blows my mind every time I think about it. That's a pretty long time for prostitution to be going on. Check out these, I think there's some nice bed and breakfast right through here. This is kind of as we were sort of heading out of town. We were just still kind of driving around. But I might have to check out the bed and breakfasts here for another visit. So yeah, anyway, I'm sorry. Let me try to get back on track. With the brothels, yeah, they were going on until 1980. And I believe back in 2012 on one of our tours, somebody told us 1989. But it was 1980. They finally raided the last of the four, I believe it was 4 brothels at the time, and shut them down permanently. And the community, many people in the community actually protested that. So anyway, they're doing this brothel tour there now, and I think our tour was a little over an hour, and we came in, we bought our tickets, they set you in a parlor, and, you know, you wait for your tour to start. And it was an informative tour, it was an interesting tour, and it was, you know, there are some kind of adult jokes. They don't allow anybody 16 or under on the tour, and I think that's very appropriate. I might have gone 18 if I was running the place, but, you know, there are some topics discussed and some words used that I wouldn't, well, yeah, I definitely think it's an adult type tour. You know, they don't show you pornography or anything like that, but they do talk very openly about prostitution. One thing that I admired is our tour guide talked about the difference between sex work and human trafficking, and, you know, how some people, you know, have had that kind of career against their will. Some of them have chosen to have that kind of career. You know, again, even though there are some adult-themed jokes, I'm not going to repeat them here, but, you know, it was the kind of joke that, you know, I might have laughed about with my college buddies back in the day. And it was kind of funny and somewhat appropriate for the tour we were on. It was appropriate. It's if you're going on that kind of tour, you're going to expect that kind of stuff. But the tour had a serious tone to it also. And our tour guide talked to us about one particular local prostitute. Her name was Nita. And she told us about that particular prostitute's life, and, you know, how, you know, she had been abused growing up as a very young child by her stepdad, and you know, other things happened in her life, and it was a very sad story. And even, you know, on this kind of tour that started out, you know, a little, you know, frat boy humor-ish, it had a moment where you could just about see some tears coming out of some eyes. And I appreciated that. You know, it was funny, it was goofy, but it was informative, and it was sincere. And, you know, I did come out of there thinking, man, I got something out of that. I learned something, and I like that. I like that a lot. One of the kind of novelties on the tour is there is actually a bed in one of the rooms that they say was a bed at one of the brothels, and it actually was used, you know, by prostitutes. And at the end of the tour, if you'd like, your tour guide will take a picture of you and your friend or whoever you brought with you on the bed. And, you know, that's a bit novel, and I'm always up for a good photo op. My wife and I did get a picture of us just standing in front of the bed. I couldn't resist. But our tour guide did say she had taken some, you know, people always wear their clothes, but some risky pictures. Anyway, it was a really interesting tour, and if you are in Deadwood, I would highly recommend that tour. It was really interesting, really different, really unique to Deadwood also. I can't think of anywhere else that has a brothel tour, and I really respected what they were doing, and I believe it was ran by the Adams Museum, a local museum in the area that I hoped to visit on this tour, but we kind of ran out of time. Definitely going to have to catch it next time. But I also wanted to mention a book that our tour guide recommended. And the book is, and I've got it in my hand right now, it's Rating Deadwood's Badlands. It's Illegal History of Prostitution and Gambling by Michael Trump. And our tour guide told us that this particular book was going for several $100s on Amazon. I looked just a moment ago. It absolutely is going for several $100s on Amazon. I don't think anybody's buying it for that, but I think, bots are artificially inflating prices of books, and this book has become one of those books that's had its price inflated that way. But at the gift shop there at the brothel, the Deadwood brothel, you can buy it for $14. And again, our guide recommended it. I bought a copy, and it's a really good book. And it's a bit of an academic kind of guide. It's very factual, and I believe the author wrote this as kind of a paper in college. It's factual. It's not legend kind of stuff. It goes all the way up to, it talks a lot about gambling and prostitution in Deadwood. How Deadwood's pretty much had at least one of them legal throughout its history, if not both going at the same time, and he even speculates about the possibility of prostitution being legal there in the future. And that's, he just kind of has a couple of sentences thinking about that at the end of the book. But it's a really well-written book, and I really admired it just because it's so factual and historical. And just a really well-done book, and I enjoyed reading it as something kind of going along with our tour. And, of course, the tour doesn't allow video, but I wanted to add a few pictures here at the end of this that I took while on the tour. That's kind of the rules of the house there, just for what it's worth. There's the bed I mentioned that was actually used during the legal prostitute days, and I just thought that was just something very interesting. Again, the tour takes you through about 8 rooms, and they talk a lot about the human side of the brothels of Deadwood. And, again, some of the signs are kind of adult humorous. But yeah, that's an actual relic from the days of somewhat legal prostitution in Deadwood. And, I didn't want to add a whole lot of pictures. There's where they found some of the original wallpapers. They were kind of restoring this particular brothel, and I just thought that was interesting. I admire the fact that they preserved that. Anyway, yeah, I just wanted to give you a little bit about Deadwood after we did our visit to Deadwood. So I hope you get something out of that. Thanks a lot.